Hello and welcome to another video from Fantasy Football Scout. My name is David and I'm looking ahead to Game Week 36 with a specific focus on my team, but also a little look in on some of the key FPL talking points going into one of the final few game weeks of the season. We just got 3 left to go, all sorts of big decisions to come. Double game weeks aplenty, and as you can see, that man on the screen there, Kieran Trippier, and his Newcastle colleagues are very much at the heart of those decisions. Now, we've just come out of game week 35, so I'm going to talk you through what happened with my team in that particular game week. I wouldn't normally go into so much detail, but unfortunately this week I need to gloat quite a lot, according to some of my followers on Twitter who said that I should. So I'm really sorry, but you also here on YouTube are also going to have to be subjected to that before we look at what's going on in Game Week 36. This was my team in Game Week 35. As you can see, laid out pretty responsibly, I think we could all agree. We've got Estupinian, Alexander-Arnold in defence with De Gea and John Stones. Need a little bit of Man City representation in the defence. I thought that was a solid choice. Jack Grealish, bet he'll start and get some minutes, right? Yeah. He's in the team as well. Solly March. Same assumption, let's be honest. Salah and Rashford's pretty standard stuff. And then Haaland up front, captain. And a lot of people have been debating Wilson or Isak. Well, in the words of Iron Man, is it too much to ask for both? And so, yeah, I went with them both. I thought this was a fairly solid setup, to be honest. I thought I was going to be getting big points out of the Man City game. And it turned out I was right and wrong at the same time. Because John Stones didn't play. And Grealish didn't play either. And actually, it turns out the fact that both of them stayed on the bench meant that I had possibly the most jammiest event of all time in FPL, because Totti, of all people, was my third sub with good reason, because he's 3.8. We don't even know if he's going to start. Wolves are a little bit hot and cold. And he only went and got 14 points, didn't he? He got a goal, clean sheet in a very surprising 3-0 win over Villa. Big derby win against Villa, who've been doing much better than Wolves this season. Did not see that coming whatsoever. And the only reason, basically, that happened was because I'd made the decision. You might have spotted in the previous picture, Andreas Pereira. Hadn't sold him yet because I had 2 free transfers for Game Week 35. I wanted to have 2 free transfers for Game Week 36. So I only spent one of them last time out, which was to get Wilson in so that I had Isak and Wilson. Got Wilson in for Jota, by the way. So I left Pereira because I'm fairly confident my starting 11's it's not going to matter. But then, so having Pereira and Stones and Grealish meant that Trippier and Totti all shunted up into the team. 46 points from 20k to 15k. So in case you couldn't tell, I am in a pretty good mood when it comes to FPL recently. So it's probably a good time for me to be making a video as well. I do apologise if this particular section of the video is far too jammy, far too gloaty. Then I'm sorry. But at the same time, I'm not, because you got to celebrate these moments. And I got to be honest, down here in Plymouth, on the Devon and Cornwall border, I haven't seen this much jam since the last time Devon and Cornwall argued about which way round it goes on the scone. So, could not really talk about it really. But, sometimes you need a little bit of luck. I've had some really bad luck this season as well. So it probably all evens out. And it means I'm looking like this for game week 36. So what I've got on the screen is a screenshot as it currently is. I haven't made any changes yet. I've got 2 that I can make without taking a hit. I don't think I'm going to be making too many tweaks. There's Newcastle and Brighton clearly the focus for this game week, but I'm already pretty well stocked. So I'll just read through my team for the benefit of podcast listeners. De Gea in goal, and then Trippier, Estupinian, and Alexander-Arnold are my starting defenders. Rashford, March, Salah, and Grealish as my midfielders. Of course, March has that yellow flag. And then up front, Wilson, Haaland, and Isak, with Wilson currently my bus team captain, which probably will change, but we will see. And then on the bench, we've got Sam Johnston at Crystal Palace. Andreas Pereira is still staring at me with his angry red flag. John Stones now on the bench with an away game against Everton. He scored 5 this week, didn't they? So, I'm not too excited about him compared to some of the other defenders. Trippier's playing twice. Estupinian's playing twice. Alexander-Arnold's at home away against Leicester, I should say, offers considerably more attacking threat, and dare I say it, clean sheet potential these days than Stones. Hence Stones on the bench, and then Totti in his favourite spot, the third defensive, he's the bottom of the pile. He's my 5th defender, my 3rd sub, the absolute unwanted child in the 3rd defensive slot. just in case I get a little bit jammy again. So thanks, Totti. Here's to the next time. But yeah, so that's what it's looking like at the moment. Not entirely sure what my changes are going to be yet, other than probably having to get rid of Solly March, because if you've got a double game week coming and he's yellow flagged, you really want to know he's going to play both. It's tricky because all of a sudden Brighton is a team that we're not entirely sure who's playing every week. So it's a bit frustrating. Will my replacement for Solly March be another Brighton midfielder? Maybe. I am going to talk a little bit about Brighton midfielders on this video. So once you've suffered through me talking about my own team, which I'm sure nobody wants, we will talk about that. But yeah, so that might be one of the things that I do. Elsewhere, it's really hard to know what to do, to be honest, because Alexander-Arnold and Salah and Haaland and Rashford and De Gea, they're all my and Grealish as well, are all my single game week players this week. Not really that interested in getting rid of them. I think Grealish is coming back in. I think away against Everton, Man City are going to score a lot of goals. Haaland's just an obvious one. Alexander-Arnold is in, as they say in good football, a good moment. And of course, Man United have their double next time out as well. So Rashford and De Gea are going nowhere. So the tweaks to this team, I'm a bit uncertain of at this moment, but there are still things, there's still things we can talk about on this video and to help, to be honest. I'm just living vicariously here. This video just helps me potentially come to some of those decisions. So that's where my team's at. Let us know in the comments where your team is at as well. I normally do Sunday streams and, can collect questions as they come in and answer as they come along. I obviously can't do that. I'm recording this on Wednesday evening and you're probably watching it on Thursday lunchtime. So should just clarify if there's any late breaking news, which I probably shouldn't be, but just in case there are, I'll be out of date on that one. But when the video is live, I will make sure to go and jump in the comments and answer some of your questions, and I'd love to hear how you guys are getting on. And before I get any further and start talking about some of the talking points, do not forget that if you have not already liked and subscribed, then now is the time to do that, because if you hit the bell notification on this video, then you will never miss a single video from Fantasy Football Scout. And if you like and subscribe, then the channel will know exactly what it is you like seeing and watching. So yes, like, subscribe, bell notification, bish bash bosh, you're sorted for some FPL tips. Now, 3 game weeks left of the season. And so what I've got on the screen is one of many benefits of being a Fantasy Football Scout member, which is the season ticker. Iconic. It's been around a long time. It's done its job. We all know what it's there for. It makes a huge difference. Now, what I've sorted it by is attack, because I don't really think many people are on the lookout for a new defender right now. So I thought we'd have a look at just midfielders and forwards. What are the teams that we should be investing in for the final 3 game weeks of the season? There's not long left to go, so you can get away with a short-term punt. Who are those options? Well, Brighton are top of the pack when you sort the Fantasy Football Scout season ticker for attacking potential over the next 3 game weeks, with 2 double game weeks coming. We all know that. It's not new information, but just in case you weren't aware, Arsenal and Newcastle up next, both of those matches away from home. Then in 37, got 2 matches at the Amex, Southampton at home, Man City at home, and then Villa away, final game week of the season. Man United also up there too. They've got Wolves, just a single game week fixture this time around, but they do face Bournemouth and Chelsea, teams that are conceding goals in game week 37, and then Fulham on the final game of the season when they could be playing for their European lives, or maybe their Champions League lives, or that's there and thereabouts. So big game at Old Trafford last day of the season. So United very much in the conversation. Newcastle, again, another team that is kind of obvious, but let's just talk through it anyway. So Leeds away, Brighton at home, Leicester at home in 37, and then Chelsea away in 38. They also have a European adventure they would absolutely love to lock in. They're in a decent position, arguably in the driving seat outside of the top 2. Really need to maximise these last few matches, and they're looking tasty. So yeah, Newcastle is another team we are going to talk about very shortly. So keep your eyes peeled or your ears to the ground. I think you don't peel your ears if you're listening on the podcast for them. Now, the only other team I just want to mention here, because we've got Man City and we've got Palace are also on the screen as well, but I think they're sort of obvious enough at this point. You're either invested in Johnston or you're not at this point. Man City double up or triple up is pretty standard. The team I just want to touch on this season ticker is Chelsea, which, as I say it, I feel like I could be sick, or I can almost imagine, even though I am recording this on Wednesday night, I can already hear the comments. I can already read the comments. People going, he's gone crazy, hasn't he? He's talking about Chelsea. and they're doing rubbish. Well, Frank Lampard does have his first win as Chelsea manager for the first time since the last time he got his first win as Chelsea manager, and actually they weren't too bad. 3-1 win at Bournemouth's not bad. The fixtures they've got just make me think that maybe there's a possibility that we see a mild resurgence from them now they've got that first win potentially kicking on, just because of who they're facing, really. So Forest at home in the next game week. I mean, that's actually not bad. Forest come into this particular game week not in particularly good defensive form. Man City and Man United are two teams that always should keep way more clean sheets than they actually do. And then Newcastle at home in the final game of the season for Chelsea. Newcastle's defence also not doing that well, famously known by basically all of us who own Trippier. So, possibility that, there's maybe someone at Chelsea we can look at who we are going to talk about in a minute. But I just wanted to highlight before we get into the rest of all this that, Chelsea are actually doing pretty well on the season ticker for the final few game weeks of the season. Do not forget that they are one of the few sides with a double game week to come. So, just wanted to draw your attention to that. Now, I promised some Brighton coverage. Let's get right into it. And I'm going to have to start with, let's say, well, it's an apology, really. I remember maybe 2 weeks ago talking about Alexis Mac Allister and saying, you know what? I think he's done. I think he's finished for the season. I think he's still playing some good football, but in terms of his FPL ability, I think he's finished because of this whole, injuries at right back, pulling Gross into that area, and then I think he's possibly had a knock as well, and all of that basically pulling Mac Allister away from being a number 10 and pushing him in to be a deeper midfielder. Not going to get as many attacking returns. Well, he clearly was watching Fantasy Football Scout content on a regular basis, as you should do, and must have noticed that I said that, because he's really kicked on and he's got goals in his last two matches despite playing in this deeper role. And bearing in mind that a lot of us went for March, I went for March on my wild card because I felt that he was the most likely starter, he was the most likely assister, not necessarily the biggest goal threat, but he just had the best all-round to offer. Now I'm thinking, okay, right, I think I picked wrong. And I'm thinking I probably need to get back in somewhere else. Now, in the Brighton attack, if March isn't going to play. So I just wanted to run through a comparison, basically, on Mac Allister and Mitoma, because they, of course, are the other two M's that have been banging in the points for Brighton this season. And it's another opportunity, actually, to be honest, to show off some of the features in the Fantasy Football Scout members area. You are almost certainly beyond fed up of me talking about this, but until the whole world is a Fantasy Football Scout member, I will keep on doing the Lord's work. What I've got here is some extracts from the members area, specifically the comparison tool. The comparison tool gives you the opportunity to compare two players with each other over a certain period. You can sometimes even compare the same player over different periods if you like. You could look at Mac Allister from game weeks 1 to 19 versus Mac Allister from game weeks 20 to 38, for example, if you want to see how particular things around him affected his FPL output, for example. And so what I've done is I've taken the last 4 matches and compared Mac Allister with Mitoma to really understand what the difference is between these two assets, because you might kind of have your heart set on one or the other, or maybe you're not sure which one to go with. Who offers what, who offers something different. It's worth knowing. And it took me 5 minutes, to be honest, to go through all of this information and draw some what I would describe as very useful conclusions for what my transfer will be for Game Week 36 if I do indeed decide to sell March and go for a Brighton midfielder in a world where, I should just clarify, in a world where we're fairly confident that we know who's going to start. Because that's a big caveat now, because De Zerbi all of a sudden has just become prime Pep. So let's just assume, for the sake of the argument, so that this whole video isn't redundant, that we know that Mac Allister and Mitoma are both going to start. We'll start with the heat map. So I will just describe it for the podcast listeners. On the left-hand side, we've got Mac Allister. On the right-hand side, we've got Mitoma. And the heat map for Mac Allister very much is in a considerably less exciting part of the pitch than Mitoma, it must be said. You've got a big old orange blob just to the left of the central midfield and somewhere halfway between being on the halfway line and in the number 10 role. That's where the biggest blob is, right? So it's kind of like a number 8, because there's a few defensive touches there as well. I look at that heat map and it screams 8 to me. That's what that looks like to me. The Mitoma one is, well, as you would expect, more of an 11, a left winger, which is exactly what he is. You've got some nice healthy blobs in 3 different sort of patches that stretch between the halfway line and the dead ball line, sort of in a left midfield position, a left winger position, halfway between the halfway line and the edge of the box, and then there's a really, really nice chunky blob basically in the left-hand side of the penalty box. So lots more penalty box touches for Mitoma than Mac Allister. Now, it's a good job that I've got some more stats than that, because it is nowhere near as simple as that. So if you're seeing people saying, like, Mac Allister is playing deeper and Mitoma is playing more advanced, so therefore Mitoma is the better option, that's probably me from 2 weeks ago, so you can tell him that he's wrong, okay? Because the goal threat is where it really matters. That's where it really matters, because what we're looking at here is a situation where, well, Mac Allister is actually just in a much better moment, as they say in football. What you can see on the left-hand side is that goal attempts for Mac Allister is 3.2 per match over the past 4 matches versus Mitoma's 2.8. And his goal attempts in the box is also higher as well than Mitoma's. And, his shot accuracy is higher, his goal conversion rate is higher, he's getting more big chances, and he's also got a better minutes per attempt. So just all of the things that you want to see from an attacking point of view, all of them are better in the case of Mac Allister, which is just nuts when you think about that positional situation you've got there. Now, what about the creativity then? The creativity is very similar. You've got a minutes per chance created of every 37 minutes for Mac Allister and every 51 for Mitoma. Again, that's a huge, huge difference. And even though he's deeper, he's able to play some of those balls over the top and create chances for his teammates. So, again, another area where Mac Allister is shining much brighter than Mitoma when it comes to FPL points potential. Now, the thing for me that just clinches it is some of the XG stats, because what we can see is that XG for Mac Allister again is higher. Now, the thing is that he is on penalties, or has taken penalties, so you would maybe expect that to be the case. Now, sometimes people take the view of penalties of like, oh, well, you don't know if he's going to take all of them. And that's fair. You've got Gross in the team who could potentially also take them. And maybe Danny Welbeck scored twice already and he'd love to finish his hat-trick. So you can't necessarily always go for it. But and some people sometimes say that it's going to skew the stats. Well, not in this case, because if you look at XG non-penalty, which means you take penalty out of it completely, they actually have the same score for XG, which basically just means that of the two, their XG is the same, and therefore, if he does have penalties, and we haven't seen Mitoma take penalties to the same extent as Mac Allister, then it goes that extra mile. So the fact that they're on the same XG, I actually personally think it still favours Mac Allister because, the same XG non-penalty. You take penalties out of the situation, they're basically the same. You put penalties back in, you just push Mac Allister further forward as the key candidate, really. Generally speaking, his XA is also higher as well. So basically, long story short, Mac Allister is playing deeper. I thought that would make him a worse option. I was wrong. Here I am admitting it to you and telling you guys that I'm probably going to buy him back because of all of the things we discussed here. So hopefully that's useful for some of you guys. Now, if we're talking about cheap midfielders, I would be remiss.
Gentlemen, it's match day.
Not to mention that guy, N'Golo Kante. We've got 3 game weeks left of the season, and you've got the opportunity to try something really crazy to get one over your colleagues, your friends, your family in your mini leagues. And if you want something really nuts, then I think you can't go far wrong with N'Golo Kante, because all of a sudden he seems to have just leapt up into consideration based on some of the data that he's been posting. I did already promise some Chelsea talk because of their fixtures, so let's just remind you again, Forest, worse in the league for XGC and big chances conceded over the last 4 matches. Man City and Man United just always love pretending they're going to keep a clean sheet and then don't keep one. And then, same with Newcastle as well. So, possibility that Chelsea can get some goals in the last 3 matches. Maybe going to get a bit underestimated by some of these teams. Entirely possible. And the issue right now is we don't know who's going to score their goals, because basically everybody's just sort of chipping in where possible, but for the most part not scoring that often. So to be fair, I should just clarify, bearing in mind that there's no outstanding goal scorer at Chelsea, maybe everything I'm about to tell you is totally pointless. But we've got 3 game weeks left of the season. Let's try something fun. And there's a possibility from some of the numbers that maybe that's going to be Kante. Because forget goals scored here. Look at assists potential. Over the last 4 matches in which Kante has really sort of got back into the team and is fit again, it'd be sort of silly not to start him, wouldn't you, regularly if Kante was fit with your Lampard. So, yeah, back in the team. Last 4 matches, he is top for key passes or chances created, whatever you want to call it, at Chelsea in that period with a total of 9. And that is without having basically any involvement in things like corners, set pieces. That's largely Reece James's affair, and he's still creating more than him, from a lot of this open play stuff. And the crucial thing is, even if, forget where they're coming from, the bottom line is he's creating much bigger chances. So we can also see that Kante is top among all Chelsea players in the last 4 matches for big chances created as well. Reece James was just 1, Kovacic was just 1. So huge gap there between him and everybody else. So in short, the data is suggesting that the most likely assister for Chelsea goals right now, N'Golo Kante. And it actually gets better than that, because if you then go and look at the assist potential for the whole Premier League over the exact same period, that 4 big chances is only bettered by De Bruyne and Bruno Fernandes, which is just nuts. They are perennial table toppers when it comes to big chances created. They've always been up there with the likes of Alexander-Arnold and, in recent years, Kane. And yeah, Kante is up there despite only touching the ball in the penalty box 7 times. So fair play to him. And 4.8 million. Andreas Pereira injured right now. People potentially looking for an additional cheap bloke just to sort of sneak onto the pitch, Totti style. Any given opportunity. Maybe you can't go too far wrong with N'Golo Kante, bearing in mind there's only 3 weeks left. So if you get it wrong, who cares? That's the way I see it. So you heard it here first. N'Golo Kante, you probably heard it here last too, because I probably can't imagine anybody else is going to be that excited about him. But I thought I'd put him out. Finally, I did promise you some Newcastle stuff as well. This is a decision for my team as well, because I'm sort of like, do I captain Isak or do I captain Wilson? We were treated to a taste of Wilson and Isak starting together for the first time, I believe, in game week 35, and it didn't really go very well. So it's already become a bit of a who do I go for to sign? And there's me, like a mug, with both of them already, going, which one of them do I captain? And so the stats from the Arsenal game, they weren't great, really. Isak played the whole game. He played the first 77 on the left with Wilson through the middle, and then Wilson came off after 77, and Isak went in through the middle. Wilson had no shots. So that's a good start, isn't it? That whole, it's like the whole way you score goals, 7 shots, man. And so obviously no shots means no shots in the box, no big chances, no shots on target, nothing. 2 touches in the box, 1 key pass, rubbish. Absolutely rubbish. Isak, a little bit better, 2 shots, 2 in the box, 1 big chance, 1 key pass, and I think 7 penalty box touches there. He being able to play through the middle for the final 13 minutes potentially helped there. Thing is, I'm not all that worried personally, because I do think that you can probably argue, it was Arsenal who really needed a result, and whilst their defence hasn't kept as many clean sheets as they should this year, they have still been one of the better defences in the league. Maybe Wilson and Isak weren't that used to playing with each other that much this season, playing on pitch at the same time. So that's a factor too, potentially. The thing is I decided I wanted to own Wilson and Isak for Game Week 35, genuinely in full knowledge of the fact that they probably weren't going to start at the same time. Because what I'd noticed was that they were both just still racking up the points anyway. It didn't really matter which one of them started, whether it was Wilson that started and Isak came on, or Isak that started and Wilson came on. Just wasn't sure. Didn't matter. They were still putting up the stats, still putting up the points. And so if that's what happens in the double game week, I don't mind. And to be honest, I'm even sat here possibly going, I'm going to captain Callum Wilson, hoping he doesn't actually start and comes on in both games and gets a hat-trick in each, because that is clearly what he's capable of when you look at some of the numbers that they've been posting across the last 4. So, across the last 4 then, if you're looking for a way to distinguish between these two, the thing about Callum Wilson is, as I've said, it doesn't matter if he starts, because the stats that he was posting in that period, and these are actually still very similar to the 4 matches going into 35. The stats for the 4 matches going to 36 aren't that different. And if Eddie Howe's thinking, okay, that didn't work, so I'm going to bench him again, you can probably still expect these sorts of numbers when he does come on. So 235 minutes for him in the last 4 matches, 18 penalty box touches, 2 key passes, 9 shots in the box, 5 big chances, and 7 shots on target. Now, all of those stats, the shots on target especially, top 5 in the Premier League, despite just playing 235 minutes. And I think it's just 2 starts from 4. And he's double figure hauls in 2 of the last 4. XGI of 3.19, goal conversion rate of 45.5%. Those are the sort of stats. If I looked at that person and I didn't know how many minutes they played, I would have just assumed they'd played 360 minutes and they'd played all the games. So the fact that he's achieving that in such a short space of time while on the pitch doesn't put me off. Isak, his stats aren't actually quite as good in the goal threat sense, but he is more of the assist man from what we can see. So he's played slightly more minutes as well, 285 minutes, 22 touches in the penalty box, 4 chances created, 2 big chances created compared to Wilson's 2 and 0 respectively. It is in the attack, the goal threat department that he is not doing as well as Wilson, with 8 shots in the box to Wilson's 9, 2 big chances to Wilson's 5, and just 2 shots on target to Wilson's 7. And his XGI of 1.72. Now, whenever I do watch him play, he does excite me, so I'm very happy to own him as well. As I said, I don't know which of these two is going to start. If they're both going to start both games, then great, I think, because 2 games of these 2 strikers are in form. Starting both, I think they'll work it out and get some goals across those games, because Leeds and Brighton, much better opposition than playing a team that has been top of the league for most of the season. So, not worried there. And as I said, the fact that these numbers are being posted by players who aren't necessarily always starting, and then they seem to just have this consistency of being able to come on and just smash things up even though they didn't start. I might still just do the nuts thing of captaining Callum Wilson in full knowledge he ain't going to start, and knowing that ain't going to matter. So it's a weird one. That's my piece on it. There's some numbers. Hopefully that's useful for you. As I said, it's a bit bonkers, but we only got 3 game weeks left of the season, so why not take a punt on one of these things is the way I see it. Now, before we finish, I would be remiss in my duties as the man in front of the camera if I did not show you a little bit of how the Rate My Team tool is potentially helping me make decisions for game week 36. Another just invaluable tool in the Fantasy Football Scout members area. And what it's showing you with its algorithm predicting the most explosive players for game week 36. What we can see is Newcastle and Brighton very much at the centre there. Trippier, top of the pile. Haven't really talked about him too much on this video, but I would basically be an idiot if I took him out for this game week. Yes, he's not been delivering, but you just know that the week that I bench him or take him out or whatever, when he's got a double, that'll be when he hauls. So it makes total sense he's up there. Isak is actually the player that RMT favours actually over Wilson. RMT is a great tool. I think it's very useful. What it does tend to really value is starts. And I think it's possible that Wilson just being an anomaly once again, because he's always an anomaly. I personally don't think him not starting is a problem, but RMT is a lot more of a purist. If it was a person, it would turn around and be like, he's not going to start, so I'm not going to give him as much predicted points, which is totally fair. And, if I was to just go back on my previous section and you wanted to decide between Isak and Wilson, who you should go if you're just going to have one, I probably would err on the side of Isak if you're going to be purist about this. Starts are key, X minutes are, so important. Then that's why Isak's up there. Pope is an obvious one as well. The Newcastle defence could do quite well in this game week, and Pope usually likes to make a lot of saves. Botman, Share as well up there with their additional attack potential on top of their clean sheet potential. Then in terms of the Brighton guys, then Mitoma actually is just ahead of Mac Allister, but not by much. It's 6.76 for Mitoma, 6.42 for Mac Allister. I can't necessarily explain that one, but, RMT knows what it's talking about, so could be right there. My general gut feel is that Mac Allister will just edge it, but, it's entirely possible that that's me overcompensating for getting it wrong 2 weeks ago. But I guess what this can serve to teach you if you are torn between the two, fingers crossed, it's a much of a muchness, and whichever one you go with does well. They're the only 2 Brighton in the top 2, and it is just testament to Salah just being an absolute legend that he is the only single game week player in the top 10, but he's made the top 10 ahead of loads of Brighton players. So fair play to him. That man, he of course is a total legend and in good form once again, which is nice to see. So that's everything from me. Hopefully you enjoyed this particular video. Apologies once again for the gloat at the beginning. Hopefully you guys watching this will have something as equally as jammy for you in Game Week 36, because you'd like to see those green arrows. As I said before, if you liked this video, then do make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you don't miss any more content. I am very aware of the fact there's loads of other videos on the channel this week, so make sure you go check those out. My understanding is we've got a team selection from Gianni, we've got a team selection from Az, Scoutcast is out there as well. The team news video on Friday will be very important if you're keeping an eye on Brighton and Newcastle in particular. So make sure you check that out with Neil on Friday. He is just the absolute team news godfather. So that will help you out no end. So make sure you check that out as well. And with that, I'll leave it there and I'll see you guys next time. May you all have green arrows in Game Week 36.